Good afternoon. My name is Diane Gutierrez-Scaccetti. I am the Commissioner of the New Jersey Department of Transportation. In addition, I am the Chair of the TRB Executive Committee. I am delighted to convene the annual meeting's Chair's Plenary session. Due to limited seating in the ballroom, the session is being simulcast in session rooms throughout the Convention Center. Welcome all of you in the ballroom with me, as well as those who are watching us remotely. This past year, I have had the great pleasure and honor of serving as chair of TRB's Executive Committee. There are massive shifts taking place within our industry, and I am very pleased to have been the chair as chair to have with TRB to complete its work on the latest edition of the Critical Issues in Transportation. Transportation is essential to achieving economic, environmental, safety, public health, equity, social goals that support a thriving society. At its heart, Critical Issues in Transportation for 2024 and beyond is designed to help challenge the transportation community to explore how travel affects personal growth and happiness, and how individual aspirations can be aggregated to represent society as a whole. My special thanks to Susan Shaheen, who chaired the development of the report, and to TRB staff members Stephen Godwin and Catherine Cordham, whose hours and hours of work on this document will pay dividends to us for years to come. I would like to acknowledge and give special thanks to the members of more than 175 standing committees and the various section and group members who reviewed papers and organized sessions for the annual meeting. This extraordinary volunteerism is what makes TRB so special and what is so needed from all of you. As host of today's session, I am pleased to have the opportunity to introduce the incoming officers of the TRB Executive Committee. Our incoming chair is Dr. Carol Abel-Lewis, professor and emeritus director of the Center for Transportation Training and Research at Texas Southern University. The new vice chair will be Leslie Richards, general manager and CEO, Southeastern Pennsylvania Transportation Authority. Members of the TRB Executive Committee provide strategic direction and oversight of TRB's programs and activities and help link TRB's parent institution, the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine, with the sponsors of TRB activities. Would all the Executive Committee members, as well as the officers and members of the National Academies in attendance, please rise so that you can be recognized. Next, I would like to recognize the significant number of people from outside the U.S. who contribute to TRB's success. My personal welcome to all of you from around the world, and with special appreciation to those representing organizations with which we have signed memoranda of understanding or letters of agreement. We are very pleased that you could join us and appreciate the effort and commitment that it took all of you to be here this week. Also, and quite importantly, please join me in welcoming students attending from the Trans-STEM Academy at Cardozo Senior High School, as well as members of the TRB Minority Student Fellows Program and the Airport Cooperative Research Program's Graduate Research Award Program. I hope this will be the first of many annual meetings that you will attend. Special thanks go to the donors and sponsors of these programs, which help introduce the next generation to meaningful careers in transportation. And at this time, I would like to turn the program over to TRB Executive Committee Vice Chair Carol Abel-Lewis. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane, and good afternoon, everyone. In addition to those that Diane just recognized, a special thanks to TRB's year-round affiliates and sponsors. We really appreciate those global affiliates and sponsors. Thank you so much. The list of those sponsors and affiliates are printed in the meeting's annual program. Thank you also to the annual meeting patrons. Recognition of this year's patrons was also included in the folders that you received in our satellite rooms. They are also listed in the back cover of this chair's plenary program. Finally, thanks to the exhibitors at this year's conference and annual meeting. The information presented and the information on those exhibitors is in your printed program. Thank you to our exhibitors. If you had a chance to go to the exhibit hall, I know that you were impressed, so we really want to give those folks our appreciation for being here. The Thomas Dean Distinguished Lectureship recognizes the career contributions of individuals in one of the major and important areas of our research. It's covered by TRB's Technical Activities Division. The 2024 recipient of the Dean Distinguished Lectureship is Dr. Susan Handy, Distinguished Professor of Environmental Science and Policy and Director of the National Center for Sustainable Transportation at the University of California, Davis. Dr. Handy delivered her lecture, Shifting Gears, Reflections on the Role of Researchers in Shaping the Ideas That Shape Transportation. That was delivered on Monday evening. And as all of you who know who attended, her presentation was informative, thought-provoking, and it really enlightened us and had us thinking about what we do and why we do it. For those who are unable to attend, a recording of her lecture will be made available on TRB's website after this meeting. Susan, would you please stand so that you can be recognized? I'm going to do sidebar. Susan is a longtime and dear friend, so really appreciate that receipt. Each year, TRB recognizes outstanding technical papers and exemplary standing committee practices. These activities are undertaken under the auspices of the Technical Activities Council, the coordinating body for TRB's technical activities. Avery Grimes, Senior Advisor for Patriot Rail Company and Chair of the Technical Activities Council, will tell us about this year's selections. I'm going to transition to Avery.
Thank you, Carol. TRB's Technical Activities Awards recognize outstanding papers in 6 specific areas of transportation research. These awards were presented at a ceremony on Monday evening, and if any of the authors are here, I'd like for you to stand up. In any case, let's give them a round of applause. A lot of great writers here. I'll tell you what. TRB's Blue Ribbon Awards recognize exemplary practices in the activities and associated volunteer efforts of our standing technical committees. These awards were presented on Sunday morning, recognized 9 committees for their excellence in identifying and advancing ideas for research, attracting and preparing the next generation of TRB volunteers, moving research ideas into transportation practice, contributing and improving to the management of operation of TRB committees, and increasing the diversity of committee membership and friends. And they're listed here in the program. Would everybody join me in a round of applause for this year's Blue Ribbon Awards? I will now turn the program back to Carol.
Thank you so much for that, Avery. The next items on our program are the presentation of 3 of TRB's highest honors: the Roy W. Crum Award, the W.N. Carey Jr. Distinguished Service Award and the Sharon D. Banks Award for Humanitarian Leadership in Transportation. The full citations on the recipients appear in this session's program. The Roy W. Crum Distinguished Service Award recognizes outstanding achievement in transportation research. It is named in honor and the memory of longtime TRB Executive Director Roy Crum. It is with great pleasure that I recognize the 2023 recipient of the Roy W. Crum Distinguished Service Award, Dr. Imad Al-Qadi, University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, Granger, Distinguished Chair in Engineering and Founding Director of the Illinois Center for Transportation. Dr. Al-Qadi is recognized for his diverse and distinct career accomplishments that have influenced the field of transportation and contributed tremendously to its growth by developing pavement material standards, analytics, and technologies that continue to shape the evolution and advancement of resilient and sustainable transportation systems. Please join me in honoring Dr. Al-Qadi for his accomplishments in earning the 2023 Roy W. Crum Distinguished Service Award.
Thank you, Carol. Dear TRB Executive Director, Executive Members, Secretaries of Transportation, and my colleagues. I'm so humbled to be here today and accept the 2023 Roy W. Crum Distinguished Service Award. I will always treasure this honor and this moment because of the enduring connection I have forged with the TRB over the years. It is because of my humbling on this occasion that I hope you will indulge me and take a moment to acknowledge my roots, which are deeply embedded in my upbringing in Palestine. My experiences there instilled within me invaluable lessons which have shaped my future profoundly, such as discovering the infinite nature of knowledge, the essence of leadership being rooted in practical experience, the generosity in sharing knowledge, the importance of integrity in our profession, the value of one's word, and the courage to venture into the field and get your hands dirty. In this moment of immense personal honor, it's only fitting for me and all of us to remember those in need of our prayers for peace in my homeland, including my loved ones abroad. Thank you. I wanted to extend my gratitude to many individuals and entities that played pivotal role in my journey. Foremost among them are my students, who have not only been in the recipients of my teachings, but the source of my own continued learning. Advising over 100 PhD students and postdocs over the years across 6 continents, it has been over the years, I was not just teaching them, but I was learning from them. I eagerly await an application from another continent, which is Antarctica, so I can cover all the continents. These individuals have been gone on to become successful administrators, distinguished professors, CEOs, and managers, and I'm immensely proud to have contributed to their paths. My heartfelt appreciation also goes out to the institutions that have been my academic homes. Yarmouk University in Jordan, Penn State, Virginia Tech, the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and many other universities that I served as an honored professor. A special thanks to the remarkable staff at the Illinois Center for Transportation who unwaveringly support and commitment to innovation and breakthrough and excellent research, and they have been instrumental in our research endeavor. My sincere acknowledgement today to Secretary Usman for gracing this occasion with your presence. This is his first time at TRB, and I'm very appreciative that he changed his schedule to be here today. The collaboration between ICT and IDOT has been exemplified a model of partnership. It's also resulted in tangible innovation in mobility. Our professional connections has evolved into a profound friendship, and I'm grateful for that. On a personal note, I express my gratitude to my family, my 3 children, a source of joy and motivation, and to my wife, who has been my constant partner and friend throughout our 36-year journey together. Lastly, I must recognize TRB, an integral part of my professional growth since my first attendance in 1986, and since then, I never missed one. TRB has been more than a platform for professional development. It has felt like a home where knowledge is shared and learned. I participate in and also led technical committees and task force, and it have enriched my profession a lot. And also it's forging meaningful relationship between me, students, leaders, as well as the professionals. My career has always been driven by a desire to make a positive impact. And in this moment, and with this honor, I reiterate my commitment to fostering resilience, sustainability, and safety in mobility for the benefits of the profession, students, the environment, and humanity as a collective. I'm profoundly grateful to each one of you today for contributing to this journey. Thank you again for this esteemed honor, TRB. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Victoria Sheehan, and I serve as the Executive Director of TRB. I have the honor today of presenting the W.N. Carey Jr. Distinguished Service Award. This award recognizes individuals who have given leadership and distinguished service to TRB. The award honors William N. Carey Jr., TRB's 7th Executive Director. The Carey 2023 award recipient is Dr. John M. Mason, Special Advisor to the Interim Chancellor of Penn State, Harrisburg. Dr. Mason is recognized for his more than 40 years of service to TRB and for his unwavering desire to create knowledge through research. Please help me in recognizing and congratulating the 2023 Carey Award recipient, Dr. John Mason.
Victoria, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Appreciate you making a decision to stop by to this little meeting that we're having here this afternoon. I very much appreciate it. I often start out making some comments by indicating every one of us wakes up in the morning and you have a decision to make. And the decision is simple. Are you going to participate or go back to bed? I'm glad you all decided to participate and show up this afternoon. To begin with, I'd just simply like to thank all the individuals that were involved in the entire award process, not just for this award, but for the others. Having been involved in some of those activities over the years, I have a full appreciation for the difficulties of not only assembling, deciding, awarding, coordinating. So therefore, I want to open my comments with just being simply grateful and thankful to the National Academies and the Transportation Research Board for this special recognition of me. But thank you for what you continue to do, and hopefully continue to do it for decades more to come. 3 simple points that I'm going to take the opportunity to reflect upon. I think it's very important if you take a look at some of the information. I started my activities when it was called the Highway Research Board. I was an undergraduate student. A faculty member decided one of the good things for us to do is to hop on a bus and travel from central Pennsylvania to Washington to my first Highway Research Board meeting. What I'd like to do is also indicate how important it is for TRB to continue to increasingly engage students, whether it's K through 12 or any form of skills training, official graduate education, or for that matter, those that want to enter the research profession. I assure you, what we do by inviting those individuals, we will see the impact in the future. Please continue to do what you're doing by welcoming, supporting, and encouraging students that have an interest in the transportation profession. In the 1980s, my wife Michelle was with me this afternoon, we packed up our bags in Pennsylvania and had an opportunity to go to Texas A&M at the Texas Transportation Institute. After 10 years of practicing as a professional consulting engineer, I had an opportunity to go back for my graduate and my doctoral work at Texas A&M, for which I am grateful. My second point drives home a different message, though. Dr. Charlie Wooten was the director of the Texas Transportation Institute at that time. He was also chair of the TRB committee over the years, and also was a former Carey Award winner. And the reason I mention that is a detail that's in my mind. After I received my PhD, one day I was walking out of the men's restroom. Dr. Wooten was walking down the hall. He says, "How you doing, John?" I said, "I'm doing just fine, sir." He says, "This year I want you to go to TRB. There's a couple of committees that will definitely help you in the research that you're doing, and please get involved in that activity." I'm thinking, well, that sounds like an order, so I'm going to do that. What's more important here, throughout the years, he and other mentors of that ilk would constantly encourage individuals to step up, show up, volunteer, and do the best that you can. You don't have to be the expert of the expert, but volunteer, be present and accounted for. I again encourage TRB to play that mentoring role for all of us in this room. It's not what we're doing today, but it's for those that follow us. And I thanked an individual like Dr. Wooten, who had a million things on his mind, I'm sure, but took a few moments to say, "I think you ought to get to TRB and get involved in one of those committees." I'd like you to take that message back. Please consider mentoring someone else in the great work of the academies and TRB. Throughout my years of engagement with TRB, I've been very fortunate to be able to experience, learn, listen, and participate in a very broad range of transportation activities. That, too, I am grateful for. What I'm also most appreciative of is I can't even begin to name the number of colleagues, my former students, many transportation professionals in the public and private sectors that I've been able to engage with. I thank you all for the collegiality, for the friendship, and for the partnership we formed over the years. I close by saying my wife, Michelle, and I have had some great experiences. We have traveled not just the United States, but I've been involved in some international programs with the Academy and with TRB. Those decades of travel and meetings required a lot of extra energy, and I appreciate her help in this. I also appreciate many of you for all the work you continue to do in the transportation profession, continue to do what you're doing, and continue to make a decision to show up and participate. Thank you all very much. Have a great afternoon.
It is my pleasure to be able to introduce the 2024 recipient of the Sharon D. Banks Award for Humanitarian Leadership in Transportation. The Sharon Banks Award recognizes innovative and successful leadership in people-oriented initiatives in transportation, sustained over an extended period, that exemplifies Banks' ideals of humanity and service. And from all I can learn, Sharon D. Banks was the heart we put in transportation. I am delighted to introduce the recipient of this year's Banks Award, Mr. Nathaniel P. Ford, Senior Chief Executive Officer of the Jacksonville Transportation Authority in Jacksonville, Florida. Nat is recognized for putting the passengers, the employees, and the communities he serves first in all that he does. He is acknowledged for his visionary and innovative leadership, driven by an innate desire to make public transportation work efficiently for people who ride, regardless of mode, and is a leading advocate for how autonomous vehicles and other advances can be used to improve the quality of life for travelers throughout the nation. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Nat Ford.
I remember serving as an Assistant Chief Transportation Officer in San Francisco for the Bay Area Rapid Transit District, also known as BART, and that's where I had the privilege of getting to know Sharon Banks. She was the general manager at AC Transit at the time, and clearly her courage, her commitment, and her dedication to serving others inspired me deeply, both then and even today. I saw how her vision, her passion, can make a huge difference in the lives of others. She influenced that younger version of myself, and I was still deciding what leader I was trying to be. And I hope that's today, that's the leader I've become. Fast forward to MARTA, where I served as the CEO, I was exposed to another group of individuals who had a sense of purpose. It was a board that was comprised of legendary civil rights leaders like Dr. Joseph Lowry and Juanita Abernathy. They looked at transportation totally differently. It wasn't about the number of trains. It wasn't about the number of routes. It wasn't about budgets and costs. It was about people. It was about how we could serve people. From them, I learned about equity and accountability and accessibility and, frankly, a higher purpose, a purpose that was almost spiritual in nature. It was also a purpose that was about healing and healing communities. Later, I became the CEO of the San Francisco MTA, where I learned the importance of holistic transportation, making sure whether you bike, walk, rode transit, or drove a car, that it was done seamlessly, and that there was no lines between modes so that our people could move more efficiently and effectively in our community. That mobility infrastructure had to have that in mind from the very beginning. So with all of those lessons, I went off to Jacksonville 11 years ago, and I saw a city filled with so much potential, fueled by a desire to help other people improve their quality of life through mobility and innovation. We set out to do a number of initiatives at the JTA. First, the Route Optimization Initiative, where we wanted to speed our system up so we could get people to and from one of the largest city geographically in the United States. How could we move the people who were using our system faster using the Route Optimization Initiative? We then followed that up with building the First Coast Flyer Bus Rapid Transit Network, the largest network in the Southeast United States at 58 miles, and right behind that, built the Jacksonville Regional Transportation Center at La Villa. Historically, La Villa, African-American community that was decimated by a transportation infrastructure program, we built that facility in La Villa to reinvigorate that community that fell on hard times. We also followed that up with a myriad of complete streets programs, areas where there were no sidewalks, flood conditions, and things of that nature. So our road building unit went into those communities and started giving them what we consider world-class transportation infrastructure. And then finally, what we call the Ultimate Urban Circulator Program, the AV program that we were very fortunate to receive federal funding to build a system to move people autonomously in our community and be able to deal with those first and last mile issues in our community that in some cases may be the first 100 miles or last 100 miles for members of our community as it relates to getting to health care, educational opportunities, and economic opportunities. I'm particularly proud of how that U2C program evolved and was able to help serve our residents in our community when COVID hit. The JTA team is an innovative team, and during that unprecedented pandemic, we were able to provide essential services to our community. We had nurses from 4 different hospitals that were actually using our system on a daily basis to serve the citizens who were in their hospitals. Our team was so innovative, they came up with something called Wellness on Wheels, where we retrofitted 2 of our buses to be mobile vaccination units that we moved throughout our community to provide vaccinations to those who, while there was a vaccine available, it wasn't accessible to everyone. Over 13,000 residents in our community received a vaccine on a mobility platform, which was our vehicles on Wellness on Wheels. We placed large orders with the restaurants that were suffering, large orders on a weekly basis to feed our frontline and personnel, thereby supporting our personnel that could not work from home, and we're supporting our community, as well as keeping those restaurants afloat economically in our community. We delivered 66,000 pounds of food to 1,900 families in our underserved communities. Needless to say, I have the honor of working with a team of folks that put people first. And we are so proud of the work that we do there. As I reflect on the leaders who inspired me, I've become increasingly cognizant of the next generation of transportation leaders, and I hope that my efforts in some way inspire them to take up the same purpose and cause. I'd like to thank TRB and my colleagues around the country. Last year, I had the opportunity and the honor to actually be on this stage as your chair. It was truly an honor that I would cherish. But to receive this award is deeply humbling, and I'm immensely grateful. So thank you to all of the folks who work in this, who are in this space, this transportation space. Our communities depend on you. Thank you to my phenomenal wife, Janet. I thank her for all of the support, along with all of my family members, to my daughter, Brittany, who traveled here to D.C. to be with her dad today, and then my sister in life and my sister in transportation, my baby sister, Zandra. She's joined me today, and I just want to thank all of you. Thank you for the work you're doing in your community. You're doing it for the right reasons. It's not about the numbers. It's about the people. Thank you. Thank you.
My congratulations to all of today's awards recipients. For those of you that have attended this session in the past, you know that now is the point that we normally turn to today's keynote address. However, today we would like to use this opportunity to have a panel discussion on mental wellness within the transportation construction community. I ask that today's award recipients please take a spot in the front row for what is going to be an important discussion, and I also invite today's fireside chat panelists to join Carol and me on the stage. Okay, there we go. Well, now back to our regularly scheduled programming. Now that we are situated, let me introduce today's panelists that are going to help us explore the suicide issue we as an industry must face. Dr. Sherri Kermanshachi is Associate Vice Chancellor for Research and Associate Dean of Research at the Office of Research and Outreach at Penn State, Harrisburg. Sherri has published more than 300 books, scholarly articles, conference proceedings, and research reports, including causes of the mental health challenges in construction workers and their impact on labor productivity. Travis J. McCarthy is a Senior Vice President and Transportation Group Southwest Regional Manager for Sundt Construction. Travis serves on Sundt's Executive Safety Committee, which helped develop and implement a company-wide mental health wellness program. Peter Tateishi is Chief Executive Officer for the Associated General Contractors of California. AGC California and America are actively developing and disseminating mental wellness tools. Fuller bios on all our panelists are in the annual meeting's printed program. We cannot address the issue of mental health and suicide if we don't break the stigma of talking about these issues. We all have been more comfortable being open about mental health challenges. We are all human. We all have our good and our bad days. My hope is that today we raise awareness of an alarming suicide rate within our country. According to the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, in 2021, nearly 9,000 youth ages 12 to 17 and 1.7 million adults attempted suicide. There was approximately one death by suicide every 11 minutes. Suicide was the second leading cause of death for people ages 10 to 14 and 25 to 34 years old. Suicide rates increased significantly among non-Hispanic, Black, and American Indian and Alaskan Native people.
Diane, those stats are alarming and something that we all need to be aware of. But unfortunately, I have to add that a CDC study found that the construction industry has one of the highest suicide rates in the country, second only to the mining and extraction industry. Males in construction had a suicide rate of 45.3 deaths per 100,000 people, almost twice the overall suicide rate for men in the U.S. To give a context, in 2021, about 47,000 people died in motor vehicle crashes, and more than 48,000 died by suicide. We in the transportation community need to play a role in addressing both of those numbers. The issue of suicide has been considered a personal issue, but it is clearly a workforce issue as well. We all need to know how to help, and we all need to know that it's okay to ask for help. It's a sobering topic, but I'm looking forward to the discussion, so let's get started. Sherri, can you tell us what you have learned during your research and why the suicide rate within the construction industry is so high?
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Carol, for moderating this discussion and also selecting this timely topic. It's really time to discuss about it. One thing I want to mention is that suicide is an event. It's a very unfortunate event that happens down the road, but there is a long journey and mental health challenges that it takes for a person to get to that point. And there are many strategies can be implemented before the person gets that unfortunate road at the end of the day. So talking about occupational suicide, it's very unfortunate that construction has a high number of suicide rate, only being second to the mining industry. So there are several factors that it's related to the nature of the job that we have to look at it and address them. One of them that we all know about it, construction industry is a very demanding job. It has many projects, they have tight schedule. People are under pressure, working long hours, night shifts that they have, an imbalanced life that they have, work-life balance issues and commitments issues that happens and affecting their families at the end of the time. Also, access to healthcare is another issue that some of the workforce, they do not have proper access to the healthcare, let alone that mental healthcare is different, so it's not the priority for many workforce to address it. Another important thing is the stigma around it and associated to mental health. It's not talked about it much. I had the opportunity to talk with, in various research projects, to talk with construction workforce who are working in the field. And with our culture, we always talk to boys, men, that you have to be strong, not to show your emotions. And many times people have hard time to admit if they have mental health challenges to themselves, let alone to talk about it with their colleagues or to their boss or other people. So we have to remove and overcome that mental health challenge or stigma, because there are treatments available, or it's just sometimes it's a short situation that we can overcome those problems. And also unpaid leave. Many times workforce, if they ask for leave or for a short off day for mental health problems, they are not paid, so they are scared. They have responsibilities for their family, financial responsibilities, so they are worried to get the time off, how it's going to impact them. One of new fears that happen within workforce is the result of automation. So I work with them and I talk with a lot of them, and many of them, especially those who are in 40s and 50s, they're worried that if a new machine or robot is introduced to the construction field and replaces their job, so what is the career path for them? They are worried that there is no job that they can work on it. The other thing is the safety issue that many of the field works, they do not have, they have safety challenges, or at least they have a perception of safety challenges. They have to work close to a traffic flow at the night, so imagine all this anxiety leads to depression, PTSD, and there are several other factors that I might address later.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sherri, for that. I'd like to ask Peter a question. Peter, the Associated General Contractors has made mental wellness of construction workers a priority and has come up with some tools designed to assist their members in addressing the issue. Can you tell us about some of those tools and initiatives?
Right. Thank you. Absolutely. This is a top priority for the AGC of America and the chapters across the country. As was stated, we have a significantly higher number of suicides than pretty much every other industry out there, and so it has to be a priority issue for the Associated General Contractors. So over the past few years, especially during the COVID pandemic, when construction workers were deemed essential in almost every state, we saw that we were carrying a different type of burden, and we saw opportunities in that to start addressing this mental health stigma and some of the dynamics that were affecting suicide rates on our job sites. So what we've been doing over the last really 3 years has been, first and foremost, granting permission to talk about mental health. The construction industry has done a great job over the last, I would say, 20 years of really promoting safety on the job sites. And we look at that physical safety, but we haven't looked at the full safety of our workers, and that includes the mental health component. So what we're first and foremost doing is inviting our companies to start the conversation and saying we need to talk openly on our job sites about the importance of mental health and the stigmas that exist all across the country and across different industries around it. So some of the tools that we've created are toolbox talks and toolkits to help companies do mental health stand-downs on their job sites. It starts with first granting that permission. When job sites, owners, and GCs and specialty contractors come together and say, this is a priority, we're going to stop and pause everything on our job sites, and that nothing is more important than talking about your mental health, it starts to show to our workers and to our people that this is important. This is a priority and that it matters. So we have a number of toolkits available, and so any of you who are looking for those, please come to our websites at either agc.org or agc-ca.org, where you can download for free all of our toolbox talks to be able to help. And a lot of these are just how to begin the conversation. How do you, as companies, where this has been something we've kind of not intentionally ignored, we felt was not something we could talk about, so how do we begin those conversations? So it starts there. Secondarily, we've also started a number of partnerships with different programs out there. One specific one is a national program with U-Turn Health. And so we actually have a great program that really helps individuals who are being challenged. And so companies can actually enroll in this program and make it available to their teams. And so that if you are having any struggle with mental health challenges, you're able to use this service, and it has one-on-one coaching with the individual, as well as then resources, and then additional resources and coaching for family, because part of the problem is that it's not something you can, we'll say, face alone. You need your support network aware of that. So we have these types of programs, from stand-downs to resources, and even to the most basic things, like having hard hat stickers for 988 and other resources to say this is important. So these are some of the things we've started doing.
Peter, thank you, and we appreciate hearing about those tools that you have available and underway. Travis, can you tell us how this issue came to the attention of Sundt Construction and what you're doing to address the problem? And also, what's working for you, and how did you roll it out to your employees? Kind of tell us what's been your experiences around that.
Sure. I think, Sundt's culmination to where we are today is a number of things that have just transpired. Unfortunately, this topic is really nothing new, but as we've seen from the statistics that we just heard, there's signs that point to it not getting better. But it was really about 6 years ago, we had CSRA come in and give a presentation on mental health, suicide prevention to some of our senior management, and that started the ball rolling. And similar to some of the points that have been brought up, the construction industry has largely looked at this fit for duty and what fit for duty looks like when someone comes to work. Do they have the skill set needed to do the work? Are they physically able? And when we started to connect the mental health sides of things, there's absolutely a connection to what's going on in someone's mind each day, and how does that make them fit for duty. The next thing that we started to see is an increase in not just the number of claims that we were having specific to mental health, but the costs that were associated with those, so we knew we needed to do something. And then we started to support the topic as part of the National Construction Safety Week, and as part of the Suicide Awareness Week in September, and the Contractors Working Mind workshops, and that kind of led us to where we are today, where we have a full-blown mental wellness committee that meets regularly and talks about the topic and tries to break down the stigma. But that's kind of the journey of where we got. We'll talk a little bit more about some of the training and some of the other things we'll do in here in a minute, but that was kind of the culmination to where we are today.
Thank you, Travis. And I think some of the things you mentioned, we could link to what Sherri said about suicide as the end point. There's a way you can see those things coming at the beginning. Sherri, you and I have the unique pleasure of teaching and mentoring the young people that are about to take over this industry. I'm hearing from my students that they expect their future employers to be supportive in terms of mental health. Are you seeing this, and what do you think it means?
Sure. So one thing that is interesting, this generation is very much different than, I would say, even 10 years ago when I was teaching in the class. So this generation, they have a lot of information, probably we should say thanks to social media. When they select a career or a job or industry, they have a lot of knowledge, information, and they know what they are getting into it. So it's very important that we introduce these challenges to them, and also let them know that there are solutions, best practices, policies. We are moving towards them, so they are not worried or scared to continue with this field. Right now, we know that there is a race between different industries. There are several federal or state agencies putting funding through the K-12 programs to attract new generation, younger workforce to different sectors, yet we have a workforce shortage in majority of the industries. So going back to the construction, it's very important we incorporate some of mental health challenge modules and strategies, best practices to overcome them into our curriculum and talk about them rather than hiding them. So we talk about them, let them know that we are aware of them, but there are solutions. If you join construction industry, you don't have to suffer alone. And also providing mentorship program for students in the university, and even prior to that, we can start from K-12 program. I had the opportunity to organize several K-12 program in addition to advising PhD and master's students, and also serve as a faculty advisor for several student organizations and instructing in the class. So I can tell you, providing information, being being transparent and educating students that we have the plan to overcome these plans is very important.
Thank you. So Travis, you mentioned the programs that you have and how they got started. Can you tell us a little bit about how younger people are helping to drive the dialogue on mental health in your company? And based on your experience, what's your advice to a young person who wants to start dialogue on mental health issues with their employer?
Yeah, I mean, I think to Sherri's point, we're seeing the younger generation, even though we're not nearly where we need to be in discussing the topic, but the fact that we're having this conversation here today, they are getting much more exposure to the problem. And one thing that not just we're finding, but industry-wide, is the younger generation are absolutely using these benefits much more than the older generation. And that's obviously a good thing. So they're getting the message, they know about the resources. And I think that they're starting to see that the stigma and the taboo that we talk about of brushing it under the rug and it's now being okay to be talked about, they're absolutely leading the charge. We have a handful of them on our mental wellness committee because we need their insight. But I think the fact that they're just getting exposure to it. We're introducing the topic into almost all of our training aspects, orientations, and they're absolutely embracing it. So I think the fact that as we slowly break down these barriers, it's just going to continue to make it a more comfortable conversation and be on the lookout for the younger folks and the next generation.
Travis, thank you, but we're going to keep you on the hot seat for a minute if that's okay. You mentioned the training that Sundt is implementing around this topic. Can you elaborate on this and explain how you're training your workforce to be on the lookout for signs that a coworker might need help, and what steps are you advising them to take when they are confronted with a situation?
Yeah, so we're introducing this topic, like I just said, in just about everything we're doing, whether it's new hire orientations, project-specific orientations. We want people to be comfortable talking about it. But we've broken the program really into 3 different aspects, and we call it it used to be under the hard hat, but as we've transitioned to the helmet style of head protection, we call it under the helmet. But it's really broken down into 3 aspects, and it's kind of similar to what Sherri talked about. First piece is called just mental wellness. The next piece is mental health, and then ultimately suicide prevention. And I'll give you just a real brief overview of each of those. The mental wellness side of things is really just the everyday stuff that people deal with. It could be, a relationship issue, a financial issue, burnout on the job. The next piece, the mental health, is really starting to look at the true depression side of things, addiction, things that could potentially lead to other things, and then ultimately the catastrophic around suicide prevention. And that talks about the psychological side of why it might happen and the effects that it has on the construction industry. All 3 of those training programs have a similar discussion, though. It's how do you spot it, and not just how do you spot it in your workers or the people that work for you, but how do you spot some of these signs at home? How do you spot them amongst yourselves? And then how to approach the conversation. It's okay to approach the conversation. And then the biggest piece is that people really understand where the resources are at to ultimately get help. And it's not just resources internally. We have an EAP line, but the 988 program and some of these other national things. We've even taken it so far, you brought up the hard hat stickers. We have hard hat stickers with a QR code that will take somebody at any time to a resource page that has internal as well as external resources if they're dealing with something. So that's kind of what our program looks like. But I think it's just introducing it into our academies, our orientations, and making sure that the conversation is talked about not just in the offices, but at the project locations as well. So,
thanks, Travis. So, Peter, we focused on this discussion on transportation construction workers, but as I pointed out at the beginning of the discussion, the suicide rate across the spectrum of the U.S. population is growing. I assume that your member organizations include planners, engineers, and other professionals that are also grappling with this issue. Are the tools that you've developed applicable to those groups as well?
Absolutely. So we do see this as a national, as a human problem. It is not just a construction problem. So though a lot of our tools are geared towards a job site, a lot of the tools can be applied to any office setting, to any industry out there. The other thing that we've really tried to make sure that we're putting into play is this more global conversation around mental health. And so part of our tools we promote on a lot of our social media channels. So at AGC of California, we have a recruitment program called Build California. And so we're reaching over 55 million individuals across the state. Impression-wise, we target and have about 54,000 young people between the ages of 12 and 24. And we're talking about mental health on those social media sites as well. There's twofold. One, we know that everyone out there, whether, and your stats showed that it's an all-age problem dynamic, we need to be making it okay to have those conversations across the board. And two, we want to make sure that we're also promoting the sense of changing the stigma around construction as an uncaring industry, or one that is not designed for or welcoming for all individuals. So by putting it out there, we're able to start this conversation with those 12 to 24-year-olds. Like we said, 55 million impressions just in the state of California, targeting that demographic at 12 to 24. 54,000 unique individuals that are actually interplaying with those conversations around mental health, and other topics, of course, but we're really trying to make sure that we're looking at the tools and resources around what the construction industry is doing are things that we as a society need to be talking about. So we're promoting those across the board.
Thank you, Peter. Sherri, the same kind of question for you. Based on your research, is there anything different that we should be doing to promote mental health throughout the transportation sector compared to those working in the construction sector of the industry?
Sure. So we are doing many great things and initiatives, but we have to look at it and evaluate what we are doing and measure the performance and what adjustment we need to make. One of the key factors is education. It's very important to educate both employees and employers about these mental health challenges, the early signs. Somebody can look at those early signs in themselves and also looking in their colleagues, and an employer can understand them. And then refer them to the healthcare system and if they have proper access. So we need to make sure our workforce have access to mental health care facilities and they are covered so they are not worried about it. So education is one of important factors. The other things is safety that cause some anxiety for people, and depression and PTSD. We have to make sure we are providing safe working conditions for people, and also educate them about automation that I referred before, that it's not going to replace them, and if it's going to replace them, there are new career paths, so we are having training for them. One of the important things in educating workforce is we understand not all of them are fluent in English. So we provide programs and training modules in their own languages so they have a better understanding them. And having supporting groups in major companies, we can have technical assistance program for our employees and workforce. And in the smaller companies, maybe community-based organization that support the people who are struggling. Also, overcoming the stigma associated with mental health challenges. People should feel safe to express their challenges and struggles to their employer and not be worried that they might not get a job in future if they are not full-time employee, or they might lose a job because they are labeled for future. So we have to look at all the sources that causes these struggles and mental health challenges and overcome them, and having policies, proper policies, for example, paid leave for mental health challenges. Sometimes people really need one day off in order to get back to the work. And as employers, we have to understand that if we do not provide that one day off, maybe the productivity of person is going down. So it's not just their loss, it's loss for the employer as well. And if they unfortunately take suicide, then they are losing a productive person. So it's going to be a lose-lose-lose for everybody involved in that system, including the whole society.
Thank you, Sherri.
So I now have a question for both Travis and Peter. We're having this conversation at the Transportation Research Board annual meeting. What are your suggestions for folks like Sherri and me and all the other researchers who are in the room? What kind of transportation-related research could we do that would help? What's needed on this topic? Travis, let's start with you.
I think just keeping it at the forefront and continuing to do the research and really trying to understand what's driving this issue, and then armed with that information, we as contractors or contract organizations can start to put much more pointed programs or training that can help address that. Even though this problem's been around for quite some time, I think you do have different factors that play into it, whether it's the economy, we just got done with the pandemic. So I would say, keep pushing, keep working to get the funding so that, we're not in the research business, but I think armed with good information, we can put programs together and get assistance that we need. So I would just say, keep doing what you're doing and work to get the funding. Obviously, when there's human lives involved, it's a top priority for all of us.
Peter?
So I might say something a little, I would argue that as researchers and as owners in the room, if you are an owner out there, we need to understand better some of the correlations between what we're seeing, which when we talk about construction workers especially, we believe, and I can't tell you this is a fact, but this is where I would think the research and finding a correlation would be beneficial, is that we also have a very high substance abuse rate, and we have a tendency to want to believe that that's what's kind of leading then into this suicidal component. More data around that correlation, and then more importantly, what's causing that substance abuse rate within construction. We have some hypotheses from a lot of our contractors and Sherri touched on this. We don't have paid sick leave for our craft workers. And so to keep costs down and to keep bids low for our projects, we don't pay if someone isn't working, which then disincentivizes them to go to the doctor, to go get treatment. And so they tend to self-medicate. And so we're seeing this epidemic in opioids, especially within construction, and the research isn't fully there to back that, and we'd love to see more of that research to help us there. And then that, in turn, can lead to something that even my members would kind of be concerned with me saying out loud. But I think we have to talk about this is then how, on the project delivery side, are we incentivizing us to look at paid sick leave? Because right now, low bid, and that's how a lot of our transportation projects in California are forced to be bid, means we have zero incentive as contractors to look at innovation and building in that cost for you. And so if there's a way for us to understand how that there is a direct correlation of substance abuse, and that's coming from non-paid sick leave, and therefore we need to look at enhancing or even mandating that we have paid sick leave differently so that contractors then aren't forced to race to the bottom on low bids. So looking at alternative deliveries, it's something we need to talk about as public owners. And I know that there is a public trust on the tax dollar and all those things. But your research can help us understand how we start thinking differently on that project delivery so that we as contractors can be more innovative instead of trying to figure out how to just meet the bottom line and be the lowest bid.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly. It's real food for thought there.
I think you got to the heart of us today, Peter. But as we get ready to close, I would like to ask if you have any thoughts or messages that you might not have had the opportunity to touch on during the discussion. And just to keep us on time, what I would ask is that each of you give us your 1-minute elevator speech on what is most important to you. And Sherri, we're going to start with you.
Sure, thank you. So we touched base many different factors today, and it's important we do lots of research on them and also come up with the strategies, implementation plan, and also pilot testing, measuring the outcome, and revisiting, and also looking at the policies. So if we have mental health crisis and suicide, I would say all of us should be responsible for it, and whatever we can do to stop this unfortunate event, we stop it. And if it's in terms of safety, healthcare access, if it's in terms of educating them, substance usage, as Peter mentioned, high level of opioid usage in construction industry, alcoholism due to many times physical pain leading to mental health. So I would say we need to have more of education starting from younger generation, K-12 program, universities, in the field for the employers, and we all of us have to keep eye on our workforce. If you are the supervisor or if your colleague is you're seeing they have the early signs, so everybody needs to learn about the early signs of the suicide or mental health and help each other. It's responsibility all of us, and if it happens, we as a whole society will suffer as a consequence of that.
Thank you, Sherri. Travis?
Obviously this topic is extremely important, and we all just need to keep leaning in and having these conversations. It's not an easy topic. It's not something that you can really get excited about. But I do know that there are large contractors around the U.S. You look at the emphasis that we put just on safety and wearing a hard hat and wearing a vest and tying off. There are contractors that are losing more employees from suicide than they are from having workplace falls and other things of that nature. And you just look at the emphasis that goes into safety discussions each day, and this absolutely has to be right in line with those conversations and part of that. And lastly, with that, I think almost any contractor, any organization, when you start to talk about safety or life, there's no trade secrets. If you're an organization that's doing something really, really good, share it. If you're an organization or an entity that needs some help getting something off the ground, call around. I think almost anybody in the room, in any organization, would be happy to absolutely share what they're doing. It's not a trade secret. So those would probably be my final words.
Peter, bring us home.
I would just amplify that. It's join us in this conversation. Give permission on your job sites to talk about mental health, whether that's in May when it's Mental Health Month or in September during Suicide Prevention Month or Week. But on a regular basis, join in this conversation. And if you're an owner and a GC wants to do a stand down, give them permission to do this. Help them in their timelines be able to say, this is an important conversation. So join us in this conversation, utilize resources, and let's just keep the awareness up, because that's going to help change everything once we give that permission to talk about this issue.
Thank you all so much. I think this was a great discussion, and I want to thank all of our panelists for joining us today. But before we adjourn, we're going to invite the U.S. Department of Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg to join Carol and me at the head table. The Secretary's been listening, and we're in the wings to our discussion, and we are excited to get his reflections on what he just heard. Please take what you heard from these three individuals seriously. Mental health is probably one of our biggest issues, I think, especially coming out of COVID. And they have done wonders for us today to help us open our eyes and our ears to what we need to do. So thank you all so much.
No, we'll take those.
Well, the Secretary has asked us to pause his part for a moment, which I think, as a bunch of DOT secretaries in this room would know, happens from time to time. So we're going to change the program around a little tiny bit. We're going to do the end, and then we're going to invite him to come in and speak to us about what he's heard today. So for me, before my term as chair comes to a close, I want to thank TRB volunteers and staff for their continuing efforts. It has been a pleasure, an honor, and a privilege to work with this organization. Now the good part, I get to say my own words. To Dr. McNutt, to Executive Director Sheehan, Vice Chair Lewis, members of the Executive Committee, transportation colleagues, and friends. It has been and will always be the privilege of my career to stand before you as I am today. 34 years ago, I couldn't have imagined that I would be blessed to work in an industry that serves every facet of society, from the most vulnerable individuals to the nation's strongest economic commercial contributors. I started at the Turnpike as a contract administrator all those years ago. And to think today that this is where my career reaches its highest point means a lot. But transportation is used every day by everyone, whether Amazon delivers a package, freight rail carries needed goods, or air travel brings families across the U.S. or across the globe together. Transportation is at the heart of our society, and it is the work of TRB that informs transportation decisions, whether it's in engineering and construction, behavioral studies, or knowledge management. The research that we conduct is an essential element of transportation project delivery. It is my hope that each of you understands the importance of the work that you do. Think of us as a jigsaw puzzle. I want you to just put that in your mind for a second. Without your work, the picture would be incomplete. There would be something missing. We need everyone to contribute to this effort. And while I know that the annual conference can be overwhelming in a good way, it is also my hope that you leave here having made one new friend and one new idea. It has truly been my honor. For my last duty as chair, I am pleased to pass the gavel to my successor, Carol Lewis. I am confident that she is ready, willing, and more than prepared to take on the task of chair of TRB of the Executive Committee. With her demonstrated leadership, experience, TRB is in extraordinary hands. I am pleased to present this gavel to Carol Lewis and turn the chair over to her. Congratulations, my friend.
Thank you. Well, you can tell that Diane and I have a fine affinity for each other, lots of respect and lots of love, and just really enjoy working together. So I am honored to receive this gavel. Thank you. I want to congratulate Diane on her fabulous year of leadership. It's been wonderful to work with her on the Executive Council, and I know I'm sharing words from the entire Executive Committee and thanking you for your time and all that you've done. And as my first official act as chair, I want to present you this plaque for your service, and it reads, Diane Gutierrez-Scaccetti for distinguished service as 2023 Chair of the Executive Committee, Transportation Research Board.
Oh, hold on. Okay. So many of you know in this room, we get a lot of these plaques throughout our careers, right? Lots of them. None will be more cherished than this one. Thank you all so much.
So our word is that the secretary will be here in 2 minutes, so we will appreciate your patience because I know you want to wait for him. So while I'm here, do you want me to talk for 2 minutes, Russell? Do it. Diane suggested we sing. I'm going to say no to that. But what I will say is that I hope that you have had a wonderful TRB thus far. We've heard just really good stories from people about their attendance here. And while Dr. Al-Qadi was receiving his award, he did not say what he said to me, is that when he comes on every Tuesday, he has his graduates who have already graduated, or students of his, to meet him for lunch on Tuesday during the TRB session. And he had 60 students with him here this past Tuesday. So I thought that was really something. I thought maybe I should take that as a challenge. As far as I know, I see at least 2 or 3, and I'm from a small university, so I see at least 2 or 3 every year. And this year I know I have 2 graduates here. So I thought, well, maybe I should start taking them to lunch. So I'm sure they're glad the secretary is not here yet, so that I can tell them I'm going to take them to lunch next year on Tuesday. But I think all of us know that we stand on the shoulders of all the people who have established TRB and have set the stage for us year after year. I too have come, not as long as Dr. Al-Qadi, but I've been coming since the 90s. And so it's such a, it's a rewarding experience, and I love to bring my students and I tell them what to expect. And I had a particular student that I knew would love it. And when I saw her once she got here, I said, "What do you think?" She said, "I'm like a kid in a candy store." And so I think that's the kind of experience that we give. A couple of our speakers today who had not been to TRB previously, and I'm asking what do they think. And so one talked about the vast array of programming, all the different aspects of transportation and the myriad of opportunities to choose what one might be interested in. Another said that their disciplinary conference isn't nearly this large, not nearly has as many people. So I think that's one of the things that we can, really be proud of.
You ready? I think the time has come. So let us give a warm welcome, please, to the Secretary of the United States Department of Transportation, the Honorable Pete Buttigieg, a true champion for the work that we do.
Good afternoon. Thanks for the chance to join you, and thank you for accommodating my just-in-time delivery. There's a lot going on this week. But I want to express how appreciative I am of TRB. In particular, I want to acknowledge Diane Gutierrez-Scaccetti. Thank you for your work both in New Jersey as a partner in infrastructure and leading the executive committee, and to Dr. Lewis, taking this leadership role on at such an important time. And to all of the members of the executive committee and to all of TRB, thank you so much for having us. My colleagues, I know, have really enjoyed the conversations that have been underway, and I really appreciate the chance to join you for a little bit too. I want to note with particular appreciation the discussion that was just taking place on mental health in transportation, because it's a reminder of the human element in what we do. We're all transportation people, and so I think we would all confess to a level of fascination with the physical infrastructure and the vehicle technology and all of the other concrete elements of transportation systems. I think it's safe to say for the kinds of people who are gathering in this room, our fascination with those things is probably beyond most people's. Although there's something universal about it too, which I can attest with fresh conviction and some new data points now as the parent of 2.5-year-old twins. I think about it every time my daughter makes a beeline for the train set in our living room, or every time I wake up, which usually begins with our son, who is at 2.5, just in that peak heavy equipment phase, who I will hear from his bedroom about 6 in the morning, beginning the day by just shouting the word excavator for no particular reason over and over again. There's something innate and magical about transportation, and we, in particular, as transportation people, love the gear, the maps, the magic of it all. But we're also here because we understand the why. Transportation matters because it is an exquisitely human field. It's about being where we need to be, getting where we need to go in order to live good and prosperous and fulfilling lives. Sometimes that means going halfway around the world for a job opportunity. And sometimes it means getting halfway across town to visit someone we love. But whatever the occasion is, we know that our lives, our entire lives, go better when there are better, safer, more efficient, cleaner, fairer, more affordable ways to get to where we're going. And when I think about how to lay out not just our transportation policy, but a philosophy of public works that can drive our transportation policy and strategy as a country, comes down to this: the importance of taking care of the basics of everyday life to make us all better off. Because it's true for anyone who counts on the ability to get somewhere, which is to say all of us. And it's true twice over for anyone whose job has to do with construction or transportation, which is millions of us around the country. We're entering the 4th year of this administration. And as you know, if you've been in government, those years pass like dog years. So even though we're accelerating our pace of action, now even more than ever before, I think we're also at this 3-year mark in a position to reflect on what has changed in 3 years, and then take stock of that and let it inform our work. And that's really what I wanted a few minutes to discuss with you today. A lot has changed, so much so that it's hard to keep track of sometimes. Think of how disorienting the pace of some of those changes has been just in this young decade. And I'll just take one example. In aviation, in early 2021, the big worry about our airlines was whether they were going to go out of business for lack of demand. By mid-2022, we were just as worried about airlines, but for a completely different reason, which was how to handle levels of demand so high that the airlines couldn't serve the tickets that they were selling. And then by late 2023, we had gotten to where we had exceptionally low rates of cancellations, even amid exceptionally high, in fact, record high numbers of passengers getting on airplanes. Only for this year, 2024, to begin with an incident reminding the country the one thing in aviation that is even more important than on-time performance and customer service, which is, of course, safety. I'll say more about that in a moment, but I raise it as just one example of the developments and the changes that we have experienced in the first 3 years of this infrastructure decade for America. What I'd like to share with you is a brief overview of where this change has brought us and the work that's still ahead of us. So I do want to begin with the subject of safety. It is the DOT's reason for being. With aviation safety in general as the most extraordinary example of what is possible through policy, regulation, enforcement, technology, and expertise. It's strange to reflect that the safest way to travel is in a metal tube flying miles above the ground at nearly the speed of sound, propelled by flammable liquids. It's an extraordinary thing, and it wasn't always that way. America's aviation safety record is something that happened through time, including with lessons learned the hard way, and we should never take it for granted. We were reminded of that last week when a piece of a Boeing 737 MAX 9 blew off in the middle of that Alaska Airlines flight. I'm thankful for the flight crews that saw to it that that aircraft landed and every single passenger got off safely. But as I made clear to the leadership of Boeing this week, this should never have happened in the first place. And the path for any plane in that category to return to service will be dictated by safety and only by safety. The design and the manufacturing of aircraft is one part of aviation safety. Another, of course, is our air traffic control system. DOT hired 1,500 new air traffic controllers last year. We've got more on the way, and it's one of many reasons why we're working with Congress to get even more resources in terms of people and technology for our ATC system as demand grows to historic highs each year. It's also why I would be remiss if I did not urge those House Republicans who persist in proposing to slash funding for FAA that this is not the time and that they should reconsider. This administration and this department have acted decisively to improve air travel with the authorities and the tools that we have. Working with Congress, we have a chance to do even more. The same is true when it comes to rail safety. We're coming up on the 1-year mark since the Norfolk Southern derailment in East Palestine, Ohio. Since then, we have conducted thousands of focused track inspections. We have advanced safety regulations, including a rule on minimum crew size that had been frozen by the last administration. And we have delivered billions of dollars to remove dangerous rail crossings completely or to improve safety for both passenger and freight rail. But we can't do it alone. 11 months after East Palestine, the Railway Safety Act is still waiting. Any member of Congress who professed interest in rail safety 11 months ago has an opportunity today to prove it by supporting the swift passage of that legislation in Congress. And then, of course, there's road safety. The whole country rightly takes note when there is so much as a close call in aviation. Imagine if we applied that same seriousness of purpose to the crisis of road safety in America that claims more than 100 lives, which is to say as many people as fill an airplane every single day. It's unacceptable. The reality is unacceptable, and that's why we're not treating it as unavoidable. It's why we created the National Roadway Safety Strategy and delivered safety funding that will benefit hundreds of millions of Americans through our Safe Streets for All program. It's why we're advancing automatic emergency braking regulations. It's why we believe we are starting to see evidence that we've finally begun to reverse the rise in roadway deaths, but there is so much work to be done on the pathway to zero. The next priority I want to mention is economic strength and job creation. President Biden's infrastructure law is already funding some 40,000 projects around the country. Some of them are intersection improvements that can be done in a single construction season. Others are bridges, tunnels, or airport terminal replacements that will take the better part of a decade. But what every project across that spectrum of scale and complexity has in common is that they are creating jobs right away. And there are more jobs where that came from. And what's really exciting is how many of these jobs are going to people in the communities where this infrastructure is being built, because frankly, that has not always been the case in past waves of U.S. infrastructure investment. I had a chance to sit with some workers who were in building trades jobs at LAX through a program that prioritized workers who came from the same zip code, the same economically challenged zip code as the airport itself. Some of them had experienced homelessness. All of them spoke with enormous pride about how, thanks to this opportunity, they were now buying their own homes, educating their children. And from coast to coast, I have seen the impact, the transformative impact that these jobs can have. I'll do a bit of napkin math that I wouldn't usually trot out in public, but I think with this audience, we're all just nerdy enough to be interested in doing a little real-time math. If somebody was working on the interstate highway system in 1967, they would make the equivalent of about $60,000 today. Over the course of a 5-year project, that would be enough for a down payment on a house purchased then that would on average now be worth about $400,000. And if they put 5% of their income into retirement, that would have value of about $350,000 today. Collectively, it would put their household wealth at about 6 times the median, all from a single job. It shows how a single job can change the trajectory of a person's life. So if we multiply that by the hundreds or thousands or even tens of thousands of jobs happening in each of the tens of thousands of projects we have underway nationwide, it will change the trajectory of a generation. We aren't just creating generational wealth, though. We're also taking on generational challenges, like confronting climate change and advancing equity. Climate change is no longer about recognizing the science. It is about recognizing what is happening around us. It is happening right now, affecting real people every day. And we see this from wildfires in the West to flooding in Vermont, and it is impacting transportation disproportionately, from I-70 in Colorado being taken out by mudslides to the Pacific Northwest transit systems that had to shut down because their cables were at risk of melting in extreme heat that statistically shouldn't even be possible. It's been jarring, I have to say, here in Washington, having to debate with some members of Congress the difference between the seasons changing and the climate changing. But for most of us, this is not a political question. It is a searing reality. And it need not be a partisan issue either. In fact, in 2022, I joined the Republican governor of Utah, a state that has definitely felt the impact of climate change firsthand, to roll out the Protect program, which is making infrastructure across the country more resilient to extreme weather. We're taking action across every mode. We're making it easier and more affordable to use an electric car by building out that national network of EV chargers. Stay tuned for more exciting news on that very soon. We're helping cities replace aging buses with new, cleaner ones. We're decarbonizing shipping routes and advancing sustainable aviation fuel. We're making transit more affordable and more accessible, and we're making it safer and easier to walk or to bike. And crucially, we're also ensuring that the benefits of investments like these get to the communities that need them the most. We all know that federal investments have not always made it equitably to the places where they are most needed, but this infrastructure package is so wide-ranging, and we are being so intentional about it that I believe this era could be remembered because of the infrastructure law as a period when the biggest wealth gaps in this country finally began to close. And in fact, we're starting to see economic evidence of that already. We're doing our part to make sure small and minority-owned businesses have a fair chance to compete for infrastructure contracts, from installing EV chargers to doing accounting work for a big engineering firm. We set an ambitious goal as a department for 21% of our own contracts to go to small disadvantaged businesses, and we beat that goal, amounting to billions of dollars in opportunity for talented businesses and innovative people who might not have been able to contribute otherwise. And we've invested in reconnecting communities to jobs and opportunity, improving rural roads and bridges that are sometimes the only way to get into or out of those communities, but also often haven't got the investments they deserve. The last area I want to talk about concerns technology, research, and innovation. And of course, that in so many ways is where this community of practice and expertise comes in. Innovation is important. It's exciting, not for its own sake, but for its ability to advance all of those other things we're trying to work on: safety, jobs, climate, equity. And to make meaningful progress in those areas, we have to recognize that we're not going to be and shouldn't be building infrastructure the way we did 50 or 100 or 150 years ago. New technology has the potential to save lives on our roadways, in a world where cars can communicate with buildings and lane markers and bicycles and each other. It's hard to even calculate how many crashes might be prevented. By pioneering more sustainable fuels for shipping and aviation, we can decarbonize some of the hardest to decarbonize sectors of our economy and reach President Biden's goal of net zero emissions by 2050 while also strengthening our supply chains. In a few minutes, I'll be speaking with experts about innovative new materials like pavement that can last longer and capture carbon and even heal itself, making our infrastructure more resilient. So no matter what area of transportation research, technology, or policy you work on, I know that you are working to the benefit not just of transportation itself, but of the people who count on transportation every day, which is all of us. That's why I want to end where I began, which is the humanity of all of this. Every driver, every pedestrian, every railroad worker, every airline passenger, you name it. Their lives, which is to say all of our lives, literally depend on the quality of our transportation systems. It's why working on them is such a privilege, and it's why working on them is so important. The possibility that we now, here in the 2020s, are shaping the most dramatic period of advancement in transportation since the onset of the jet age means that fewer people will suffer from avoidable crashes. It means that more people will have good and meaningful jobs and the ability to get to them and back home with enough time to be with the people that they love. It means that our kids will live in a more sustainable economy and breathe cleaner air than we did growing up, and it could even mean that they will live in a more equitable society than the one that our generations inherited, all through good transportation work. Best of all, we'll be able to tell them, our kids and grandkids, that in these consequential years, we took every dimension of travel, from safety to sustainability, across every form of travel and transportation, from ocean shipping to aerospace, and left it better than we found it. We've got a lot to show for 3 years' work. but even more that must be done in short order. It is daunting and it is tantalizing at the same time, which I know is the very equation that propels so many of you in this work. That, and the pleasure of living without any doubt that our work matters, and the knowledge that we are part of something much bigger than ourselves. That's why I am excited to continue working with you in the young years of this America's transportation decade. And I cannot wait to see what we're going to achieve together. Thank you very much for the chance to join you. Thank you for your great work. Thanks very much.
What more can we ask for than a U.S. DOT secretary who takes time to spend with us, not here, but in so many areas and so many associations that we belong to? We should be extraordinarily grateful for that. Well, this completes our Chair's Plenary Session program. On behalf of TRB, thank you all for coming. The remaining afternoon sessions and committee meetings will begin at 3:45.